So the theme is real world parenting lessons from adolescents. I think maybe I should ask how many people have watched this series? Show of hands or in the chat area. If you can let us know if you've seen the series already. But I'm hoping that lots of us have seen the series already, or at least have heard about it, even if we haven't seen it. Um, Whatever it is, whether you've seen it, whether you've heard about it, whether you've had any other interactions with the team, we're hoping that by the end of today's session, you'll have a well-rounded understanding of the various themes which that series puts forward, and especially from the angle of personality. So, within the Africanist parent team, over the past 4, 5, 6 weeks, we've been working on the theme of personality as part of our purposeful parenting strategy. And what we're doing there is to try and support parents to better understand their own personalities and temperaments, as well as the personality and temperaments of their children and young people in their care, and to see how best to work together so that both parents and children and young people can achieve a harmonious living, but also make sure that they've got a supportive environment for the young ones to thrive. And so it's on the back of that that we're holding today's session. And thanks to everyone who's been part of the trainings, who's been part of the in person sessions, the online sessions over the past few weeks, culminating in today's webinar. Like I said, the session is being hosted by myself and Bumi. And I'll hand it over to Bumi, perhaps, to introduce us to our panel.
Right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Petty. So then, welcome everyone to tonight's important and timely conversation. And like Petty did say, adolescence is a complex journey, often shaped by identity formation, emotional growth, sometimes peer pressure, actually most times peer pressure, and sometimes increasing online exposure as well. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation for today. And with us to really go deeply into the conversation, we have our panel speakers, and I'm just going to start with Joshua Komolafe. Joshua Komolafe is a teen coach and also the CEO of Jolakko Ak Holdings. I hope I pronounced that properly. The parent company for multiple business initiatives. Joshua's main focus is helping youths, young adults, and young professionals to discover what they're good at, operate from their best, and find fulfillment. I like that. Through training and development in the areas of leadership, purpose, public speaking, and branding. And Joshua is also an author. He's authored 9 books and resources, including 100 Questions Before I Say I Do, The Act of Delegation. We're going to be hearing more from Joshua today as regards to young boys, masculinity, issues around identity formation. We had Joshua over the weekend for our teens academic session, and it was a brilliant session. We had good feedbacks from the teenagers. So looking forward to a very informative session. Welcome on board, Joshua. Next is Pavan Kar. Did I pronounce that properly, Pavan?
Yes, you did, yes.
Thank you. Pavan is a digital parenting expert and founder of Kids and Click. Is a digital platform dedicated to helping parents navigate the online world alongside their children. She serves as an expert contributor for Internet Matters, offering practical advice on emerging online safety issues. Her insights have also been featured by the BBC, The Telegraph, Talk TV, and major media outlets. Today, Pavan will be going deeply into the issues around online presence for young people, and would hear more, especially on the issues around the emojis and some of the online influences that often has an impact on our young people. Welcome on board, Pavan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
And next on our panel list is Tolu Owolabi, a parent advocate and also a trustee at Africanus. He's a seasoned commercial and operations management professional with over 2 decades of experience across energy, project delivery, and business transformation. His work spans around everything strategy and performance management. And he also supports Africanus with our GCSE pod administration for our young people. is very passionate about youth development programs, and is also, like I mentioned, one of our key trustees on the board. Welcome on board, Tolu. We'll hear more from Tolu about issues around temperaments, personalities, and young people's growth and development. Welcome on board, Tolu.
Thank you. Thank you.
And next is Kalinga Mutunga, a personality trainer for Africanus. She's an accomplished community leader and personal development trainer, and she's got extensive expertise across education, community organization, and health. She is the founder of Imiti Ikula, a cultural initiative that offers coming of age guidance rooted in traditional African teachings combined with modern knowledge for adolescents and young adults. We just completed a 3 weeks personality training, and Kalinga took us on a very great journey on how to discover our temperament, not just for ourselves, but for us as parents as well. And we'll hear a lot more about how temperament and personality played out in the movie Adolescence, and how we can take the learnings from that movie into our day-to-day parenting journey. Welcome on board, Kalinga. Right. Over to you, Paddy.
Thank you so much, Bumi, for the kind introduction of our panelists, and thanks again to all our panelists for being here. So the first set of themes, what we'll do is we've picked some very key moments in the series, which will guide today's discussion. And the first moment which we've picked is really linked to this idea of, or to this issue of bullying, as well as emotional regulation and the search for power amongst young people, especially adolescents, and the way that it played out in the movie. I would like for Bumi to speak to this idea as is reflected in this scene from the series, and then we'll move on to asking the questions of our panelists. So over to you, Bumi.
Right. So the question that I think comes to mind while when I watched the movie is what went wrong, and how did the young Jamie find himself in that kind of situation where violence was involved. And I think that played out for everyone who have watched the movie as well. There isn't just one single reason to explain why Jamie did what he did. I think there are a lot of factors and events that played out. And this particular picture in front of us is a very deep-seated challenge that the parents had to discover at the very point where the deed has been done. And if you've watched the movie, you know fully well that at this point the father was really was shocked. What's the other adjective to being shocked? Really completely taken aback by his son's what the son had done, because at this point they had watched a playback on when the violence took place. So one of the themes that came out very clearly is the issue around bullying. And this particular scene, when we looked at the playback, it showed how Jamie had been bullied over time, and eventually that's all issue played out to result into that violence that happened. There are different types of bullying. We have the racial bullying, we have other types of bullying. But in the Netflix series, one that came out very clearly is the incel bullying, which is from the word, and I'm just going to read what I've written, from the word involuntarily and celibate, a bullying and abuse kids do to others to make them feel less of themselves. So incel bullying is a form of harassment which is often rooted in misogynistic beliefs, where individuals target others, especially women or socially successful peers, and they could target them either offline or online, and they subject them to abuse due to perceived rejection or social exclusion. So really, one of the key things we want to really talk about today is the aspect around bullying. And I'm going to hand over to Paddy to ask some of the questions from our panelists to really understand how it played out in this movie and what we can learn from it.
Thank you so much, Bumi. I mean, as you rightly mentioned, the utter shock on the father's face when he was confronted with the evidence which the police had gathered, it speaks to I mean, everyday experiences where you find parents in situations where perhaps they get called up in school. It may not be as severe as this case where it was a police and a crime, but you could get parents being called up to school or neighbors raising complaints, and they're really shocked. Is that my child being described? How can that be true? Or are you mixing up things here? So the question we'll be asking to our panelists, and perhaps I could start with Tolu, is how can we have parents build a system to regularly check in emotionally with their children, not just physically, but emotionally?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you for the question. Of course, like you said, the question is quite relevant to the adolescent series, where much of the emotional turmoil that young people experience is stems from not being seen or heard at home, really. So, building a regular emotional check-in system from, I would say, it really doesn't require a therapy degree. It requires intentionality, consistencies, and emotional safety, really. So, checking in emotionally with your child it shouldn't be a one-off conversation. So it should more or less be about building a rhythm that says something like that says how you feel matters here. So it doesn't need to be heavy or formal. The key is creating consistent, more or less low pressure moments where your child knows they can talk, they can reflect, and it can come down to having a regular ritual, building in short check-in moments into everyday routines. It could be bedtime chats, dinner table questions, or every opportunity we can. So questions like, what was the best part of your day, the hardest one, something that made you laugh. So it should be an opportunities like that can really help to provide an opportunity to check in emotionally with children. And it's also important in terms of the kind of questions we ask, open questions, you know and we instead of just saying, are you okay? Because that can close up a response to that can close up conversation. Because if you say, are you okay, and the child is not really interested in talking, the child can just respond no. But things like, what's been on your mind lately, anything today that made you feel big feelings, or is there anything that can help you think through? So it's those are important. And another important thing is, we need to build more or less, like, I would say, a no consequences for sharing zone, so to speak, so that it gives confidence to children, that they know that if they open up, they trust that opening up won't be met with punishment. It won't be met with judgment from our own side. It won't be met with panic or disappointment. So it's and some of and in having some of those conversations, some of the lines which we could be using is something like, what you're feeling, whatever you're feeling, we can talk about it. And I'm being very open that they won't get into trouble, because we need to build that trust for them to be able to open up. Because if we say we want to regularly check in with them and they don't feel that opportunity is there, the trust is there, then they won't have that confidence to open up. It's quite important. And we should also, in the midst of that, also, as parents, even while we know we're trying to do that, sometimes, because of course we live a very busy life, and then we're trying to, like, get the information out of them, it just doesn't work that way. So we also need to respect their emotional pace, so to speak. Some children, they won't open up on demand. So, and if you try to demand that opening up from them, it might even worsen the situation. So if they don't open up on demand, that's okay. So the goal is more or less to make it safe enough, that when they are ready, they know the door is always open. And so it's just to maintain that presence, Like the saying goes that presence without pressure is quite powerful. When they know that that presence is there, and that their parent can have listening here without judgment, then it makes it easier for them to communicate. And it should also not just be just a parent and child tool. Let's try and involve the whole family as well. We make emotional check-ins more or less like a family norm, create like a weekly family circle where each person shares their high, low hope. As just the way adults, we all go through different emotions. Of course, children go through different emotions. It's okay to go through it. So we need to make it create a family, or make it a family circle that everybody can share. And because we do that, it models that emotional expression for everyone, and everyone feels safe within the family to share whatever they're feeling like. So tools like this are really important in building that system within the family, that trust, that comfort
Mm.
for everyone. And then those understanding is what help us as parents to be able to know how to support them.
Can I quickly ask?
Yeah.
And we know fully well with teenagers. Let me use teenagers now. It's at the point where they want to gain independence. They want to be by themselves, especially boys.
Mhm.
I mean, I've got a boy that is like an introvert, and he hardly you hardly know when he's high or low. He's just the same person. How do you get teenagers at this stage? How do you majority of them stay in their room? On phones, on computers, on games and all. Parents
Yeah.
are busy. We are in the world where parents, you go to work, you come back, and you
Mhm.
engage, but probably not, the deep side of it. How do we, get to that point where you really can get into the world where your child is and be able to understand when challenges like bullying is happening before it actually degenerates or escalates?
Thanks, Bumi. And I think if I can pick up on that, it's a two-way street, isn't it? Like Tolu was saying, the parents have to be intentional, consistent about it as well. Because if I reflect on the adolescent series, you remember was it D.I. Luke when he went into the school and his son wanted to tell him something, but you could see the struggle, the son trying to get his father's
Yes,
attention, and you could see how uncomfortable the father was in having that
exactly.
conversation. And then he was trying to force, okay, let's go and have lunch. Okay, what can I do? And how awkward it was. And I would like Joshua to speak to this. So the first bit around what Bumi raised in terms of how can we get the teenagers into these conversations, but perhaps also building on what Tulu has kindly shared, how can we get parents to be intentional and consistent, bearing in mind that being an adult is a full-time job, and then being a parent is another full-time job. Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much. Just checking you can hear me, first of all, before I continue.
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I want to start by thanking AfriKindness for the invite. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I know many families, they might not tell you directly they're impacted by the work that you've taken on yourselves. And it's funny that you said adulting is a full-time job. You've added another full-time job with that. So thank you. And I know many children in years to come will be grateful for this platform that you're providing. So to the question, I want to challenge parents and say that many parents are too far technologically from what is happening online. They joke about, or we don't even know what platforms our kids are on these days, and that's not a good thing. I think, you know, one of the first steps that I want to really bring up is that it's possible for any parent, no matter how little your tech savvy is, to go on YouTube and type, how does TikTok work? What platforms are children aged 13 to 17 using these days? How do you use Snapchat? And you're not going on these platforms to stalk your children, but so that you can genuinely have conversations with them, understanding some of the dangers of those platforms, knowing how to navigate those platforms, but also engaging your children where they like to be engaged. So it will shock many parents to know that in today's world, in university, many lecturers respond to their students via Instagram DM. So you don't even need to send an email anymore. This is now what's happening. And lecturers are willing to adapt to listen to their students via social media and say, okay, if you have any questions, you don't have to come to my office. You don't. So I think there's the angle of, yes, we need to get our kids more involved in physical activities. Yes, we need to go to the park with them and all that kind of stuff. But to parents, first of all, I want to answer this question by saying too many parents are too far technologically from the world their children are in. When last, as a parent, did you attempt to play a game on your son's PS5 or Xbox? Many of us can't remember when last we said, okay, teach me how to play this. Demonstrating to our children, like Tolu said, that we're willing to leave our high horse and meet them where they are. And one of the challenges that parents really need to take note of is the fact that we're so used to talking down at our children and expecting them to tell us upwards. We demand an answer, they give it to us. We demand an answer, they give it to us. And we need to reduce or change the leadership structure in the home, perceived leadership structure in the home, so that children know you care enough about them to step into their world. And then you'll find that it's a lot easier for them to begin to open up. Another thing that I've observed from my small corner of the world is that many children, like you described in that scene, they don't actually have the vocabulary to express themselves. So one of the things that, again, still on the parent side, that parents, and this is a session for parents, majorly, so I'm going to focus on the parents this evening, is helping our children, whether they're teens, whether they're kids, to be able to express themselves in ways that gives them a range. And, like Mr. Tolu said, sometimes that expression will come after release. So for some children, it's exposing them to activities like boxing, high impact sports, for example, a journaling, that mean they're able to release what's on their mind first, and then they can find it easy to then share with you from that release. So these are some ideas that come to mind off the back of that question, that, parents are really, really far. And, I know Paven's put her hand up. She's an expert on the online side. So I'll pass it over to Paven if I'm allowed to continue this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, Joshua and Tolu. That was just amazing. And Joshua, I just loved exactly what you said, that sometimes children just don't have the vocabulary to express, what they're actually thinking or feeling. And I think it's us up to parents in terms of how to make it easy for our children to be able to do that. So for example, now I'm not selling a book here, don't worry. This is something that I've made for my own daughter, a journal where she can circle how she felt during the day, whether it's red, angry, or blue, feeling sad, or green, whatever, she's happy, and she just circles that, and then we speak about those feelings. Then again, this is just a way to help her express what she's actually thinking or feeling. But just on the series of Adolescence, just a little bit, I think the other very important thing that we need to actually understand here is that keep in mind that this is not a documentary. This was a movie. This is a TV series. So just don't take it as plainly as this is the experience of every young person online, because this is not based on every single one person that actually goes online. So just don't take it like in that sense. And the other thing I also want to say to the parents in this room whose children have access to a connected device, keep in mind that the internet is a place for your child. The internet is not a thing for your child. When I say the internet is a place, that basically means is that a place where they learn, they grow, they make mistakes, and they form friendship. With any place your child goes to, it's so important that they are guided by you. So if your child is going to a virtual place online, here are some things you need to ask yourself. Where are they going? So are they going to a social media? Are they going to a gaming app? Who are they going with? Is it just friends in school? Are they going to be strangers present? Are they going to be by themselves? Are you familiar with where they're going? Are you familiar with the app? Are you familiar with the game? And do they need your guidance or do they not need your guidance? Because keep in mind, whatever they watch, whatever they see online, those are reflected by true, actual feelings. Those are real emotions that are raw. And finally, I would just say, just start touching on this topic on helping children express themselves. I think when it comes to things like adolescence, and then we go to incel culture and misogyny and all these really big technical terms, a lot of parents immediately switch off because they feel like, gosh, I don't know what world that is because I never grew up in that world. Well, let me tell you one thing, parents, all this misogyny, incel culture, and all of these technical terms of Snapchat and TikTok, the one thing that you have is maturity, critical thinking, and self awareness. And that is what your children can actually learn from you. So, although you might not know the technical things, you have feelings, and your children can understand from your feelings. And your job is to help them express those feelings, and you can help them through those emotions.
No,
Sorry,
thank
can I jump off the back of that? Sorry, Dr. Petty. I want to really stress something for parents that before COVID, many of us perhaps didn't know how to use Zoom, log in virtually. That wasn't a part of our job before then. But for the sake of our bills being paid and the check coming home, many of us adapt ourselves to be able to learn how Zoom works.
you.
And now it's second nature for many of us. It's an app on our phone that we use, Teams, Google Meets, and we've not complained about that. So I think we really need to address ourselves and say, as parents, that you're willing to make such a change for
Mm.
work, but you're not willing to make such a change for your children. And that's very telling for many parents, that to go on YouTube, spend 20 minutes. We always say, oh, I don't understand this. This is too far from me. And I really want to stress this point, that you don't have to have the app on your phone, but you should understand, like Pavan's just said, the kind of world your children are stepping into and be able to help them navigate. Because as much as children think, and we've all been children ourselves, we felt like we could stand on our own. We knew the world. We knew our left from our now you look back and realize you were so far off the truth. You didn't know where you were going. Our children need us. They really, really need us. And it's difficult to come to you when they do come to you, your understanding of where they spend most of their time is warped. That's where I'll stop. Thank you.
No, thank you so much. I mean, having Josh is like you're speaking to me because I remember my daughter comes and says, "Oh, come, mommy, I'll teach you how to play Minecraft." And then I start, and she's like, "Oh, not again." But it's that thing of I let myself be vulnerable, and then I show that willingness to learn, and it gets her thinking, "Okay, okay, I'll spare you this time, and then we'll try again." So thanks, really, we have to make that intentional effort to learn. And it's really good the way you use the example of Zoom and Teams and all of those things we've had to learn for work. I think that really demonstrates that we can do it. We've got it in us. We just need to be intentional about it, also for the sake of the children. Now, it takes us really nicely to the second question, and I'll ask you, Josh, if the children actually show up, use the vocabulary. And yeah, the other thing I was going to say is I like that book you showed us, Pavan. And you know what it made me think about? How schools do this already. Because sometimes I go into schools, especially primary and early years, and they have these cards where children come in the morning and they pick up whether it's a smiley face or it's a sad face. And what I keep telling myself is schools have a system that seems to be working in some ways. And as parents, perhaps we also have to be curious. So when we see schools do something, maybe we should be curious to say, why is school doing this? And is there something we can learn from that? Whether it's the point system, reward system, or is a smiley face, sad face, perhaps we can pick up some things that schools already do. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. These things are out there and we can work with those who know who know the science behind it. Pick up a few things which we could also implement at home. So I just picked up that from you, Pervin. Thanks for sharing. So Joshua, the next question about if children actually then have this vocabulary or use it, they show us a sad face or an angry face, or they say they've been bullied or they've been rejected or loneliness, any of these negative emotions, which, to be fair, as a parent, would be really difficult to manage. How can we help them to process these things?
Um, Thank you for asking that question because there's a man called Tim Elmore in America, and he wrote a book on the different generations that exist, and he went all the way to Generation Alpha, but he concludes and says there's not enough data for Generation Alpha yet, so he stops at Gen Z and really gives detailed analysis on how each generation interprets life and the kind of things that they've had to deal with. And he compared Gen Z to the generation of the Great Depression. And he said, look at the kind of things that they encounter in the news and so on and so forth.
Mm,
And, each generation has a mirror that will help you know how that generation sees life. And I just found that very interesting, and the reason why I say that is as parents trying to raise up children in in this day and age, um, one thing that we can, well, I'm not part of that generation. I'm younger than that generation. One thing that I believe you can all point to is the fact that the way you interacted with emotions is very different to how your children are interacting with
mm,
emotions. So the question in and of itself is very misleading because manage emotion to your generation as parents is very different to manage emotion for your children. There are two cardinal rules that when I'm working with young people, I try to help them understand. Number one, you must not live an emotionless lifestyle, which means you try and suppress your emotions and pretend that they don't exist. And then number two, don't allow your emotions to rule you if they differ from the truth of what is happening in the moment. So it's helping yourself as a parent to step into that same light that your child expressing an emotion does not necessarily mean danger, danger, danger as it sounds from their mouth. I'll give you an example. I'm a, would you call second generation immigrant? And my parents, we came over many years ago now, over 20 years ago, and I started to pick up the lingo. And I remember, it was snowing outside for the first time. I'd never seen snow. So I said to my dad, I said, I'm afraid it's snowing outside. My dad looked at me, he said, afraid? What are you afraid of? And if you don't understand British lingo, I wasn't afraid. I'm just telling him that it was just part of the colloquial way of describing that it's snowing outside. So that's the first thing as I'm answering this question that I really want parents to understand that because I've seen parents run away from this discussion because the whole description from their children sounds so morbid and so gray. And the
mm,
first thing I want to say to parents is it's an encouragement to you that as your children start to describe, don't be discouraged. As they describe what's going on, this is the first generation that's actually taken charge to say, this is exactly how I'm feeling. I'm not going to suppress this. This is exactly what's going on inside of me or mentally. And for the first time, they've started to receive words. So there's someone listening this evening that just needed to hear that it's okay, because sometimes depending on your culture and your background, you feel like, oh, my children are always negative. First of all, give room for that kind of talk to happen. Then, as I finish my response, so I don't talk for too long, there's an acronym that I've come up with when I work with young people that has really helped. Although it's in a faith-based setting, it can be applied across depending on your philosophies of life. And there's an acronym called ACTION that I use when I'm dealing with the young people. Action regarding emotions. Number one is acknowledge where the emotion, or rather, acknowledge you have the emotion. Acknowledge you have the emotion. This is very key. So, in helping your children to identify and therefore manage the emotions that they have, you have to give room for them to acknowledge the emotion. And the reason why I gave the preamble I did is when your child tells you, I'm feeling depressed, that one of the first things that parents do, they say, oh, red flag, red light, ambulance, ambulance, what's happening? What do I need to do? Are you okay? What's wrong? What's wrong? And it's just everybody breathe. Give them space to acknowledge acknowledge the emotion. Number two, the C, consider where the emotion has come from. So once you've given your child the space to express themselves, you clear the tension and start to engage them, whether it's in conversation, whether it's an activity, depending on how your child operates, you will know yourself. The best way to engage your children to say, okay, do you think we could try and trace where this has started from? What happens when you feel this way, or what tends to happen that makes you feel this way, and so on and so forth. The second thing is to be grateful, thankful that there is a solution to this issue. So express this with your child, because many times your child needs that reassurance from you that despite the way they're feeling, there is a way out. And one of the things that the parents, or roles the parents will play in the lives of their children, is that reassuring voice that despite the challenges of life, there is better for you. There is more on the other side. So gratefulness, be thankful that there is a solution. I stands for identify the solution that exists. So as a parent, you therefore need to have, attended sessions like this that Afrikindness are putting on, to be able to equip yourself with different ways, being able to help your child identify the challenge that they're experiencing. And then O stands for obey the solution, follow through with the solution. And when you are helping your child in this season, it's going to be a mixture of you initially helping them to find the solution, showing them how to apply the solution, taking a step back so that they apply the solution themselves, and then potentially teaching you to demonstrate that they've gotten the solution themselves, that this is how I apply the solution, and you hands off. And then N stands for nurture the solution, continuously, so that away from your presence, when they find themselves in that same situation again, they can apply the things that have worked before, that you've helped them through before. Because one of the challenges that parents have, and I'll stop here, is that the ones that do find they've been able to build successful systems, those systems only work till they leave the door at home. As soon as they leave the door, then it's all hell breaks loose. And the way you want to help your children is the way they revise for exams. You want your child to be able to answer 2 + 2 is 4, but when life throws at them, what is 4 - 2, you also still want them to be able to say the answer is 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Joshua. And I think that's one that parents will keep at the back of their minds: action. Now we'll move on to the next set of questions, which really deal with the themes of misogyny, idealized views, and the pull of online ideologies. These are some of the things that have come through in the conversations far. So I'll let Bumi speak into this scene very briefly to set the tone for the questions that will come through for the panelists.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Petty, and a very good. I love the acronym from Josh. I've taken notes of that. So parents, I put that in the chat as well. So in the movie Adolescence, the boy had an encounter with a female psychologist, which is what we're seeing on the screen at the moment. And if you watch the movie very well, you would see that the boy displayed a very high level of emotions in this particular scene. One that seemed very scary to an extent, because when I watched it, I was quite taken aback that, oh my goodness, this boy had this so much anger, deep-seated anger and mistrust in him. And it seems it was towards women in authority, because he questioned our authority. He dismissed our attempts to connect. The psychologist was trying to connect, to understand the situation, to understand some of those deep-seated feelings and emotions that he had over time. But he dismissed everything. He responded so much with hostility. There was a particular scene where he kicked the, I think there was a cup on the table. He kicked it off. He kicked the chair, and I thought at some point that he was going to really harm the lady. And to be honest, the lady also was really shocked at the level of anger that the young boy had at the time. And I think that links very nicely to the next theme that we're going to be looking at, which is misogyny. and idealized views that some of our young people could pick up either online or through friends, or from anywhere. And we would like our panel speakers to really help us really understand what is misogyny, what are those idealized views in the world of today that our children, our young people are exposed to, and what can we do to make sure that the right value is set at home. Over to you, Pedi.
No, thank you so much, Bumi. And I think that sets the tone really nicely. I mean, I'm happy to call on Joshua, but feel free to wade in, Pavin, Tolu. The first question is, what is misogyny? And I think we could link that to the second one, which is around how can parents encourage critical thinking about gender roles and relationships in light of this problem of misogyny? Over to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Dr. Peddy. Thank you, Bumi, for the introduction to that as well. I think misogyny is one of the many themes, and as time goes on, the names will change. So I prefer to tackle the root of the issue, which is, where do all these negative views that young people seem to grasp and hold on to, where do they come from, and then how are they gaining so much strength in the lives of the young people? And I think we need to start to look at the intake of content that young people are taking in. No matter how innocent someone is, if you repeatedly take something in, it goes in through your neural cycle, as many of us are aware, to transfer something from your short-term memory to long-term and therefore subconscious aspects of your brain. You do it through repetition. So the more you watch something, even when it's not true, and that's why countries like North Korea, during Hitler's time, Germany, propaganda was so key. They feed fake news to the people. And so it helps to structure the way that people live their lives. So I think the first thing to look at is the kind of content that the children are taking in, being mindful of that, setting ground rules about the type of things that they can watch, being vigilant with the places that, as Pavan mentioned, your children are visiting online. It's very, very important that we keep an eye on that. I know many parents who have just given up, and all they monitor is time that they spend online. And, if you care about your children, it seems like you're a police, but you have to go that step further to say, I care about you enough to know exactly where you're going as well. And sometimes that looks like installing some parental spyware on the systems of your children. And you don't have to know how to do that. Even I don't know things like that, but you can get somebody to help you to make sure you're monitoring where your children are visiting. So like Tolu said, despite the fact that you know where they're going, it doesn't run into their room, burst in and say, how dare you visit this site? But it just gives you an idea of the kinds of places your children are going to, so that you know how to approach them. To solve the challenges, I think the problem can be eradicated by the kind of exposure you give to your children. If our children are seeing women in a position treating young men well, then when they listen to stuff on YouTube, or their friends show them, because you can't control everything, their friends show them something on the bus or on the playground, they take it in, but they say, but I know this auntie, I know this person that does this, and that goes against the views that you're saying. Surely there's a gap in the information that you're sharing with me here. So the exposure is key. Give your children data to feed off, so that when they hear contrasting views, they have something that they can fall back on that is contrary to those views. And the final thing I'll say for now is starting early. So just in case some people are not familiar with some of the negative views outside, there's a big issue right now with some groups encouraging men to be violent towards women. That's one of the issues in this season. It's really taken root and spreading. So, teaching men that women are second class citizens, women are taking the space, similar to the kind of views that some of us as parents have heard that immigrants are taking our place at work. Because of immigrants, we don't have jobs. I don't know where that came from, you know. So in the same way, that those kind of views, they're going around, and it's very sad. But because we live in a broken world, you're always going to have something. For every generation, there will always be something coming through. I'll stop there for now so I don't talk for the world.
No,
Thank you.
thank you. I mean, thank you very much. And what I would say is, if the other panelists want to add to that bit around how we encourage critical thinking, please feel free to do so. But I like the point you've made that now it's misogyny, but it could be anything. But fundamentally, it's about providing the right data because as you don't want a vacuum. So feed them with the right information, with the right perspectives, so that when they go out there, there's something for them to compare with. Thanks for that, Pavan. You've got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua, Paul. That I think you summed it up like really nicely, like understanding the content. So I think the most important thing is, I think first of all, here's the thing, right? When it comes to protecting your children online, let's not just look at screen time because not all screen time is the same. A child spending 1 hour coding or, being creative or video editing is very different than a child spending 1 hour just passively scrolling. So I think even when you install all these parental control tools, understand what you're getting out of it. If it just says 2 hours of screen time today, then don't just take the phone or the device away. Understand what that 2 hours was being spent on, because different screen time will give different reactions to your child. So understand what they're actually doing on the screen without before making those judgments. When it comes to critical thinking, the most important thing is just having that awareness to keep asking your child to question what they see, what they hear, and what they listen, and make that as something very normal. And I'll tell you an example. So my daughter is she's going to be 8 very soon. I get a lot of scam calls on my phone. When scammers call in and said, "Oh, we're from your domestic appliance," or "You've gotten into a car accident," and stuff. Sometimes I don't recommend everyone to do this, okay, because it's not good to answer scam calls because you're giving out information. But when I'm driving back from school with my daughter, I actually answer the call on purpose, knowing that it's a scam call because you can see that block thing that comes out on your mobile phone. And I should put it on loudspeaker. And now my daughter actually knows when a scammer is calling, and whenever there's a phone ring, because we talk about it when the scammer calls, and then she's, oh, okay, am I speaking to Miss Kaur? And we know you've been in a car accident. Do you want to renew your insurance policy? And I'll be talking to my daughter. Do you think that makes sense? And she'll be like, no, we've not been in a car accident. I said, exactly. Is this real or not real? And she's like, no, this is not real. I said, this is what you call a scammer. They want to take money out of my account. And she'll be go like, why? And where does the money come out from? And then we talk about banking, and we talk about how saving happens and how they get the money out. It basically opens up the conversation. But what we do is that we normalize these kind of conversations at home so that she's more familiar. I mean, she's a 7-year-old who understands scam calls right now. But funnily enough, every time my phone rings, it's either daddy or a scammer. So those are some of the things that we get right now from a 7-year-old. But what I want to say is normalize this kind of information, normalize this kind of conversation in your daily life, and that way you can start building this critical thinking skill from a very young age.
So thank you so much for that, Pavan. And I like the way you've illustrated it because it doesn't have to be a moment in itself. So you don't have to sit down and say, oh, now it's time for us to have this conversation. But you've
Yeah.
basically picked up something that's happening in the course of the day and used that as a way of reflecting on very key developmental issues. So thank you. Tulu, I see your hand up. And in addition to what you were going to say, if you could also speak to this idea of how can we then instill the right values at home. Over to you, Tulu.
Yes, I think, okay, if I make respond first, maybe you allow Kalinga to come in before I jump to the next question. But I think it's just to add to that way of encouraging critical thinking about gender roles and relationships. And I think a previous speaker, I think it's Pavan, have mentioned the fact that we need to also challenge stereotypes every day. The other bit I just want to mention is diversifying the influence that we have around our children, making sure that children are exposed to positive role models who defy gender norms, things like female scientists or a male nurse, strong female leads, and opportunities like that. I think it also helped them to understand what the different genders can achieve, the extent of their limits, and also in terms of sparking critical thinking, is good to use open-ended questions. So instead of just lecturing them, we can just ask questions like, why do you think some people believe girls should behave a certain way? Do you think it's okay for boys to be scared or gentle? So creating that opportunity to ask those questions, we can help them to have that critical thinking, and then we can have conversation, and all this can help them to be able to understand and be able to pick the good ones out of the loads and loads of information they get online, because we can't be there when they get exposed to those information. Yeah. So yeah, I would
Thank
allow
you.
Kalinga to come in there. Yeah.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Tolu. We'll pass it on to Kalinga, but also something you said, just to remind ourselves that sometimes even parents themselves get caught up in the stereotypes. So as parents, we also have to examine ourselves and be sure that we're not mirroring the wrong or incorrect stereotypes around gender roles and relationships at home, but also in our relationships with other people outside the home. Over to you, Kalinga.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. First of all, I apologize for coming in late. My system shut down. So I had to call my, is it Gen Alpha? No, just before Gen Alpha granddaughter. I said, come, you need to sort this out. So she came on here and said, what you need, Nana, is switch it off. I said, I know how to do that. She said, you should do that every time. So we switched it off, switched it on, and sorry, just to say, yes, what everything you're saying makes a lot of sense. And I'm going to add to just pick on what Pavin said about involving them in the normal life, making things normal, like when she has a scam call. I've done that with my granddaughter. We had a scam call, and I've shown her, scam, what shall we do? And we've answered it. And I'll give an example, maybe because it's a Christian way. I have talked over the phone and I said, so why are you calling? I'm calling fire on this phone. I'm calling fire down this phone. And my granddaughter would be laughing, but we would do it together. We would say, so she knows now, when there's a scam call, she says fire through the phone herself. But we laugh about it, but it works. So we are saying that to do things together, make things for them. So one of the panelists said, come down to them. We wanting to get them to come up to us the way we think, the way we do. But one of the panelists said a very important thing, come down to the level where they are. So we work things together and they can see that these things, life can be dealt with in a normal way. And again, picking up on Brother Tolu was saying about the gender roles, making our children see that men and women can do. They can do this. These days now, where we are, there's no work for men and work for women. They can do whatever their ability has for them to do. My sister is the first woman pilot in our country. In those days when it was difficult, and my father refused, said no, girls do not do this piloting thing, or they don't do that. But she fought through. She's older than me, so she's in her. We will not say how old she is, but she's a celebrity, and it's good for our children, our daughters and sons to do that. So yes, normalize things. Make them see that it's okay for women and men to do these roles. So much to say because I had to pick up on it, so I will just leave it on there.
Thank you so much, Kalinga, and thanks for sharing that experience with us. I think it's really good to see the common threads running through and this example of the scam. So you try to make it light, but at the same time you educate them so that they understand the dangers and how best to respond in such situations. So thank you. Tolu, do you want to comment really briefly on that last bit around instilling the right values, and then we'll move on to the next set of questions, if that's okay.
In terms of instilling the right values, it's I think it starts from intentional parenting, really, and it starts from within the home. Anyway, I think the saying goes, charity begins at home. Children mirror what they see. So if we want them to demonstrate respect, yeah, empathy, to show perseverance, then we need to live those values consistently at home. So it's important. We need to encourage open conversation about real world challenges and help children to reflect on their choices. They reflect on their choices and the associated consequences of those choices. So it's important. And those reinstilling those values also, we also need to expand their circle of influence by also looking at surrounding children with what I would say a village of role models, extended families, mentors, community leaders, educators, the same set of people that will reinforce consistent messaging. Although the challenge is also there that if the messaging, for instance, messaging from within the home is different from what they get outside, it can be. But we need to, and like I said, that's where that intentionality comes in. We need to be intentional and be able to expose them to the right people that will reinforce that consistent message. If there are programs that is done in schools, maybe the school program, after school program, we should be able to align the select program that will align with the values that we think we want our children to take. Of course, the one that is the difficult one is the media and digital influence on children. So we need to know that what children consume online, of course, we talk about it, is it shapes their worldview. So there's that need to encourage critical engagement with media. And I think we've said it, the approach is not to ban everything. It's because if it's just a strategy that that can be productive, because they will grow up to a point that they will be out of the home. At that point, are we going to be banning all the access? So that's not the approach. It is more or less about encouraging that critical thinking, asking reflective question on what do they think about what a character has done, in maybe watch a movie with them or something. What do you think that character should have done differently? And then for them to be able to pick their learning. So as not to take too much time, those different approaches, really, we have to be intentional about bringing it together to help them to build those right values. Yes, very important.
Thank you so much for that, Tolu. Joshua, you've got your hand up.
Yes, just wanted to add to that, talking about values and philosophies. I think if you think of the values of, it's like the lens through which you see life. Uh, Parents understanding that will be more intentional in how those values are shaped. And I'm very big on my acronyms and my list. So I'm going to share another one with us that I think will help. I have a lovely teacher. She is called Mrs. L. And Mrs. L taught me an acronym. She didn't really teach me. There's no person called Mrs. L, but that's the acronym, Mrs. L. So the first one, Tolu already mentioned this: model before you mentor. So you have to first model that behavior that you want to see, the values you want your child to take up as important. We must model that. I won't talk too much about that. I think Tolu's already really spoken well on that. The next one is routine that value or the philosophy. So, you build something subconsciously through repetition, but instead of making it random, make it a routine. My daughter is 2 years old now, And when she started talking and the kind of behavioral patterns she's demonstrating at home, we had to make sure we do it as a routine. So as I take her to school, kiss, hug, thank you, okay, yes. And she started to, with routine, understand that these are values we follow through with in our house. S is story. So human beings, whether you're a child or an adult, we tend to take things on when we hear a story behind that value. So many of us in the generations above, we have parents who would tell us a parable or a fable by the fire, but it had a meaning or a moral behind it. So with our children, if we're able to, and this is why some children's books got written, because the parents, I don't know if many of us know Miss Rachel on YouTube.
Mm.
If you have any young children, she started that channel because her son needed it, you know, and because of that, she started to do some animation stories for her son, and now it's gained global recognition. So in the same way, we don't have to be Miss Rachel, but story the values that you want your children to take on, because you know what, they will never forget those stories. And when they come to those situations where they need to make a decision, that story comes to their head, and the moral of the story subconsciously is what they follow through with it, or the voice of the moral speaks to them when they find themselves in that situation. It's very, very important. And of course, Mrs. L, the L stands for love. Make sure everything that you teach your children, you model at home, is done in a loving manner. I've seen people try to implement the things I've shared with you, but in a dictatorship style. Their children, this is when you wake up, this is when you do this is when, and do you know what happens? And we see this play out so many times. The children follow through. They're the most well-behaved kids you've ever met in your life till they get to university. And then they come back home, their hair is orange. And they say, well, you're not the boss of me anymore. I followed your rules. This is my life now. And according to the law, I'm an adult. I can do what I want. And that's the worst thing you want from your children. So, acronym, Mrs. L. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Joshua. And I think that takes us really nicely to this issue of online presence as well. I think we've touched on some of these already when we asked at the beginning, how do we create a system for children to be able to emotionally regulate with the support of parents? But if there's anything that we haven't highlighted yet, especially in connection with the online environment, I'll perhaps start with Pavan to share in terms of how can we as parents regularly debrief online experiences with children to help them unpack what they see online. Over to you, Pavan.
Again, I think, Dr. Petty, I think we have Joshua has covered a lot of that, is the conversations that you basically have with your child and normalize those conversations with your children. Because whatever they see online those are true, real feelings. Those are actual emotions. Like a lot of the time, parents often feel that the online world is this abstract thing and it's just on their phone, and that's it. But here's the thing, right? If you go back to the movie Adolescence, there's a particular scene where the mom was talking to the dad, and the mom asked the dad, where did we go wrong? Jamie was just in his room. The thing was that this 13-year-old boy was not in this room, that this 13-year-old boy was out there in the world late into the night, meeting strangers. The one place that he's meant to feel safe at home became the one place that he's most vulnerable, because we place so much of importance on the physical danger surrounding our child, and we are ignoring this invisible danger that's creeping into our child's thoughts and brains. So I think the first thing, as parents, first of all, is set boundaries at home. No devices in your bedroom. Your bedroom is meant for your child to sleep, for your child to feel safe. Because the moment we allow devices, a connected device, we are essentially allowing strangers into our children's bedroom. the one place that they're meant to feel safe. Second of all is speak about feelings and speak about it regularly. Normalize those feelings. So for example, right, with my own children, if I'm having a bad day or if I'm not having a good day, I actually tell them, I said, look, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling confused. Normalize those feelings, those negative emotions. They are real feelings. We don't always, as parents, have to be perfect and have to be good, because we're trying to tell our children it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel confused. Adults go through this as well. And when we normalize those kind of feelings, we're just giving our children the space to basically be open about their feelings. Essentially, what we want to do is, like what Joshua said earlier, is create a safe space and normalize conversations. And for example, I created actually again, I'm not selling any book because this is all just for my own children. A book called Little Bunny and His Computer for my 7-year-old daughter when she started using iPads and stuff. And it talks about how, this little bunny met a dog online who ended up being a really bad dog who wanted her information. And then the dog felt scared. And that's how I introduced the idea of online safety with my child. That's not too daunting. I can't talk to her that, there's bad people in the computer. I don't want to scare her from all of that, becomes a bit too much. So we normalize it. And then sometimes, when I'm going online, my daughter will just ask me, oh, is there a bad puppy on the computer? I'm like, not right now. I know who I'm talking to right now. Like, for example, on this webinar, she's like, are you talking to strangers? I was like, I trust these people. And that's why I'm having this talk right now. Again, normalizing this kind of conversation with your child, because at the end of the day, whatever your child see and whatever your child goes through in their digital world, those are just as real feelings as what they go through in the playground or in school. But just have boundaries. I think those are just the most important thing.
Thank you very much for
So,
that, Pavan.
sorry to jump in again. Please forgive me. I'm speaking again as someone who I came here when I was 8 years old. I've spent most of my life here, and if I'm able to look back to what Pavin has just said, I wish that parents modeled the behavior of telling us what was happening to them. I really, really wish that if they did that and led by example, it would be very easy for us to not feel like we have to be so strong and so bold and to say, this is like my dad, saying, it's been a tough day for me today. Hearing a man say that as and for single mothers who are listening to this, that might say, yeah, well, I'm alone. What advice do you have for me? We spoke about role models, having people that are close to your family, they visit home regularly, safe people, of course, that can model this behavior. Once every 2 weeks, you have this particular on-call, or, just people that you trust, because it's so important that we see this. And I love what you've done there, Pavin, and I'm going to take a leaf from your book and potentially design something for my child. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Kalinga, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I was just going to say also I was going to add on to many, but I'll just what Joshua has said about modeling, showing your feelings. We had to do that because my son and my husband, a normal African, strict, perfectionist father. You don't talk, you don't do, you just, yes. But it came to a stage when the children were teenagers. They were now afraid of him and myself. I were wicked because as a mother, they would talk to me, but they wouldn't talk to him. So he used to get angry and say, why do they come to you? Why not come to me? It's because he was a perfect man, going to work, coming home, sit down, do what you need to do. So they saw him as they couldn't connect. It came to a stage where we had to sit down as family and get him to talk about his life. As a young man, as a child, his life, talk about his challenges here in this country, talk about what his plans are. Just that opening up, He opened up and was vulnerable. Amazing how that changed a lot of things in my son and my daughter. They were able to connect with him. So when there's tension in the house, I would nudge him to say, tell them a story about when you were young and you stole some mangoes. It's like, no, I can't tell them that, because as parents, you want our children to look at us as great people. We don't make mistakes. Well, our childhood was perfect. So I have to just encourage them. Remember, it really helps them. So when he would do that, my son, who would look at him as a perfect man, would now actually respected him more, which was a shocking thing. Because fathers are thinking, if I tell them my mistakes, my vulnerable places, they won't respect me. The opposite happens. So encouraging us parents and fathers especially, mothers as well, to be vulnerable. Like I would come from work and say, I didn't have a good day. I had a problem with this person. This is what they said. What do you think how would you have reacted? Oh, mom, what I would have done. So engaging them. And I know what I'm doing. I'll bring different scenarios. Like my boss said this. What do you think? I should have told him. Yes, so just saying, adding on.
No, thank you so much for that, Kalinga. And whilst you were speaking, I just remembered the very common one where all the parents came first in class. And then the question is, who came second? Not supposed to ask who came last. But yeah, thanks for that. I think we'll just end with this final question for this segment and then move on really quickly to the next one. And it's about the use of emojis, which was depicted really strongly in the series. So what are some of the dangers, and do you think it's overhyped, or should parents be worried about emojis, considering also that the meanings sometimes change over time? So what would you advise on emojis and level of concern amongst parents? Pavan, maybe?
Yeah, no, here's the thing. I think everything comes with context, right? You can't just take a child, send, a maple leaf emoji and then equate that to being cannabis, for example, So everything has to be within context. So don't overlook into this emoji and overthink it. I think if you see something worrying, just ask your child, as simple as that. Teenagers might not be very open into these things. We got to keep that in mind. Not everyone is going to just show their phone to their parents and tell them what it actually means, but you've got to read into it a lot deeper. The thing about these emojis, they're not as simple as how it's being depicted. Yeah, it's being used, and I've seen it myself on Snapchat, for example, where it was an investigation by the BBC that actually found that drug dealers are using these emojis to basically sell drugs on Snapchat, targeting young people. So for example, the horse emoji means ketamine, the phone emoji means you can call in, the car emoji means you can drop off the drugs, and so on. So there are real cases on how these emojis are being misused. But just because your child is using these emojis, don't immediately jump into the conclusion that that is what your child's actually doing. Now, if you do have parental control tools, there are, for example, some tools that actually track the conversation that your child is having, and that conversation will be able to decode what those emojis actually mean in the conversation. So just because your child is using the emoji, it doesn't mean that it means that danger thing. It could really just mean anything. And these emojis, they just use so differently, right? So for example, like for the longest time, like the hand clapping emoji, I just think someone's giving a high five. But then I speak to someone religious, is someone just giving me like a prayer nod or something, like praying for me? So again, we use this thing so differently. So just don't read too much into it, but just be aware that it could be in a different way of young people communicating. I think just having that awareness.
Thank you so much for that. Yes, Joshua.
Sorry, just to chime in as well. Thank you, Pavin, for that. I don't think parents should try and particularly. So this is funny because I work with a lot of young people, and even I'm 31, but even I am out of touch with the kind of things that they say and do, and I still consider myself young. So I wouldn't advise parents to try and read into, for example, when something's really funny, they show the skull, the skeleton with the crossbones, to say, this is so funny, I'm dead. But you can read that and think, is my child depressed? And it's so far from it. I think I would say to parents, instead of trying to read into emojis, don't do that. Look at the behavior of your child. That's more important than the emojis that they say. In fact, I found that with this generation, that they can send something on text, and if you see their face, it's very straight. So they say lol, ha 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 ha. They typed that, but if you see their face, they just stood like, huh, okay. So what you should be more mindful of is how the child really is, like what's really happening to you. You know, how is online affecting you as an individual? That yes, you're meeting and going to spaces online, but then it starts to affect you, your physical soul. That how is that affecting your soul? That's what parents should be more mindful of. And when you start to see that, okay, the emojis are, there's a strong correlation between how your child feels and what they're typing, you know, then we start to take action. But I think most parents, like Pavan said at the beginning, to kind of calm everybody down, not everybody's house is like Adolescence, the show. You know, some people it's like that genuinely, but you know, for most of our kids, there's still hope. It's not that bad yet. So yeah, have faith and yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's I mean there's so much that you have all said, and in a sense, just listening to you, sometimes I'm reminded about how even the things you need to do to keep children safe online are very similar to the things you do to keep them safe in person or physically. So as parents, we shouldn't feel daunted about it. We shouldn't feel worried because we are already doing these things. We just need to be adapting it to a different environment. I think we can go on to the bit around temperament and personality. We've had lots of conversations over the past few weeks which build on this, and it's going to be the last section for today's session. I'll encourage our audience to please feel free to type in your questions if you've got any, so that we can put them forward to the panelists whilst we go through this last set of questions. I mean, if Bumi's still there and happy to share with us what we see here very briefly to lead us into the next set of questions. Over to you, Bumi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Petty. And very quickly, the picture in front of us is Jamie's dad. And I think it was in a situation where there were some boys that, you know, were tormenting the family at the time, writing, you know, wrong things on his boss. And it got really very furious and very angry about it. And I think at some point, he chased them up and tried to probably, you know, create a scene, which the daughter was quite shocked to see the dad's reaction, including the wife as well. And I think it also played out during the conversation with the psychologist, the female psychologist, had a conversation with Jamie, asking Jamie about how his dad reacts when he's, you know, angry. And Jamie mentioned something that there's been an occasion where the dad was angry, and I think he blew the roof off or something of a building or something like that. That's to show us to what extent, you know, the dad's anger could get to, which the son obviously picked on. So that would lead us nicely. This scene shows a lot around emotions and how emotions could play out, and sometimes it sits up deeply in our, you know, personality or temperament, and it could shift towards, you know, things like aggression, isolation, or violence, as it were. So over to you, Dr. Petty. Hopefully, we're able to drill down to some of the temperaments that was depicted in the movie and how it all played out in young Jamie's life.
Thank you so much. And I think just building on what you've mentioned, also you remember the scene where Jimmy was being interrogated and some issues came up about his grandfather and then his father and then, you know, the mom. So highlighting some of the connections between not just Jamie's in terms of a child's temperament, but also the temperaments of the parents and the adults around the child. So the first question I'd like to ask is, how do you think parents' temperaments could influence the way they respond to their children's struggles, and what impacts might this have on children's development? Because if we're taking points A case in point being what played out in that series and the way in which the father responded once he understood what had happened, the role the boy had played. How do you think our temperaments as parents could influence or impact on the way that we respond to our children's struggles? Because these struggles will happen. And what impact could this have on children's development? Kalinga, if you'd like to go first.
Thank you for that question and for that intro. Watching this movie actually was quite. It created some tension in myself because it made me remember things. The personality of the father being a lot of choleric in there, a lot of melancholy in there. I'm remembering also the time when Jamie said when he was playing football and when he made a mistake, the father would not look at him, he would look away. And then the psychologist said, why, something like, why did you want him to look? Why do you think he looked away? And then I think he said something, or there was like he was ashamed. Didn't want to look at him because he'd be ashamed. That already brought up the idea, the thinking that the father being perfectionist, the melancholy, the perfectionist, always wanting everything to be exact, to be perfect, to be online. A bit like our own upbringing, really, how we've been brought up. Everything had to be correct. Everything had to be just so. So when you grow up with that, and then it's all belty in it, and with Jamie, the young man is Jamie, isn't it? Jamie having already a similar personality like the father, or just put in nothing, it's all pressed down, and there's no room for expressing how you're feeling. There's no room for feeling like someone said, a safe space to I think what I'm trying to say is that children need to be allowed to explore safely at home. I think as parents we are afraid, like Joshua said, when you hear depression, like something danger. But it's not always that. But children must be allowed, must be. I think we are to speak to them and talk to them to say it's okay. If you are depressed, it's okay. What's going on? If you are angry, like our choleric children, if you are angry, it's okay. It's safe. You want to scream, you want to shout, it's okay. It's okay. Tell me about it. Scream about it. So I think the question saying that how did the parent's temperament influence the young man? For me, I believe he wasn't given time to express his emotions, time to own his feelings, like we've been saying, to say, I'm feeling angry and I feel like I want to hit somebody, or that's how I feel. So our personality, when we model anger like the father modeled, the children also take on that. The children also think it's safe to react like that. Like the father bringing the shade down, pulling the shade down when he was angry, and the son seeing that, thinking it was okay, as the way he demonstrated in the room, how he just stood up and threw the chairs everywhere, because that's how the father does it. And so the way, as we have been saying, in our homes, how we model, how we are, is how our people are. I like that saying that says, I hope nobody will be offended when we say, monkey see, monkey do, and monkey do to small monkey. So, yes, we are to be aware that everything we do is what they'll be as well. So it's it's also funny how when they discovered what he had done, the father, when he was upset and crying, he turned away from the young man. He turned away from the young man. You would think that he would not turn away, but to tend to the son, and he did that later. But the first emotion was to turn away. So it is. What I'm thinking as well. What is coming to my mind when you ask that question was, it's difficult to behave right when you yourself have not been taught or have not been modeled that. Jamie's father, is it Eddie? His name Eddie? He himself from his father and his father have been doing that. So
Yeah.
he can't behave any different. So that's where the reparenting comes in, where we have to reparent ourselves, go back to learn to be parents again. I know maybe that is for another section. But yes, our behavior it impacts on our children and how they react.
Thank you very much. Tolu, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, just quickly to add on. If we go back to Jamie's dad did mention his own experience with his dad. I can't remember the what happened. I said his dad beat him seriously. He made an improvement, to be honest, in terms of his own parenting, and in that last episode was telling the wife that after that incident he made up in his mind that he will never beat his own kids like that. Yes, he made an improvement with respect to that. But of course, he also lost a bit in terms of managing his temperament. Of course, we've talked about how he reacted when those boys sprayed something on his van. And then if you see when he came out of that DIY store, the way he attacked the boy when he saw the boy. I must also mention that we as adults, we also have our own personality and we have our own temperament. Unfortunately, for some adults, it's a bit too late for them to learn to control or to suppress it. So accidents do happen. What I mean by accident do happen is there are times that things happen and out of impulse we overreact, just like the way Jamie's dad was angry, and the only way he could think of reacting is pulling the shed down. But I think where we can help to 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 limit the impact, how it impacts children's development, is realizing the mistake right away. As parents, if you think you reacted in a way that is not right, after calming down, it will be a way to do a bit of damage control will be to address it and let your children that witness that episode know that that is not the right way to react. That is not the right way to respond, and be genuinely remorseful about it. And that is exactly the learning they will take from it. And it all comes back to what we're saying about being vulnerable, because as parents we want to maintain that high pedestal as if we don't sin, so to speak, as if we are perfect. We're not. So we should be able to. And I've had an incident recently that I was having conversation with my daughter about something that happened to her. I had to use an example of similar mistake that I've made when I was her age, to let her know you're not alone, you know to let her know that, look, this things like this are part of life, but what matters most is how you recover from it, how you pick yourself up. So as parents, when we make those mistakes, we react in the wrong way because of our temperament, because it's who we have, which is hard to change as an adult stage. But we must be able to retrace our step immediately and make amends. And that is the valuable lesson that the children will learn at that point in time. And that will be, at the end of the day, will have a positive impact on their development. So that's just what the bit I wanted to add.
No, thank you very much for highlighting that. And I think that's a good place to draw a line on today's conversations. So I will now invite each of the panelists to just give your closing reflections. We've talked about a lot today, and personally, I've picked up so many things which I think makes a big difference, not just in terms of managing my own temperament and supporting my children through theirs, but also in terms of online safety and how to keep children safe online, but also offline, and how to just build a conducive environment at home where children can thrive and feel like they can be open and vulnerable to us as parents, but also for me to feel like I can be vulnerable to my children because, come on, they're my children. And if I can't do that with them, then who else would I be able to do that with? So, really, a lot has been said, but we'll just go round the room with our panelists because we don't have any questions from the audience. Thanks for your patience to everyone who's still with us. We'll be rounding up now, but round the room with our panelists, just any final words which you'd like to share with our audience. And I'll start with Joshua, and then I'll go to Pavan, Tolu, and then Kalinga. So over to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Dr. Petty. Thank you, Africanus. Thank you, Bumi, for this great platform. Honestly, sometimes when one family is impacted, the way it spreads, and we've spoken about Eddie and the generational impacts that, from grandfather all the way down, you don't know. So this session, I believe, is doing a lot more than you have planned. So take hope in that. Final words from me. To every parent on this, just to acknowledge that parenting is hard. It's a real task. If it was easy, everybody would excel in it, and there'd be no need for these kind of forums, and giving ourselves, because I'm a parent myself and I'm just starting, many of you are ahead of me on the journey. And I've been very mindful to speak with the wisdom from my perspective as much as possible, and take in. And I've really learned a lot today. Parenting is a real task, and we need to lean on all the help that we have. Second thing I'd love to say is that our children have become better at expressing what they're going through more than we ever have been, but they are weaker at dealing with those issues than we were. I'll say that again. Our children express what they're going through much better than we did, but they don't have as much strength and grit like we did. And I say we as if I'm part of you, but I'm a bridge. So parents listening, so listen to them because they describe better, but help them because you are more mature. That's very key in this stage that you find yourself. And, I loved what Tolu said about admitting when you've gone wrong. For that question before, temperament should never be an excuse for the way that our children's struggles are dealt with. Never. Your temperament, whether you're introverted, extroverted, phlegmatic, melancholic, whatever your temperament, it should never be an excuse. We shouldn't address the issues of our children based on our discomfort. We should address the issues of our children based on their needs. So our temperaments aside, you deal with your children based on their needs. It's very important. And finally, for me, as Tolu really started to speak on that, you build a philosophy in your house that says, based on my temperament, I will interpret things differently. So if I'm more choleric, I'm more likely to burst out and say, oh, and say that's okay as long as my initial reaction does not lead to danger or something I'll regret that I have to try and undo later. So I think we have to give room for that in our homes. And then finally, like Tolu said, to say that when you've done something wrong, you've reacted in the wrong way, to build a system at home, the value system philosophy at home that says we apologize. We're not called to be perfect as human beings. We're called to be sincere. That's all from me. Thank you so much, Africanus. Thank you, Dr. Petty, to all the panelists. Thank you. I've learned so much because I'm still growing in this parenting journey myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pavel, I'm going to write the book for my child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joshua. Pavan?
Yeah, I think Joshua, you've just summed up everything like really perfectly. I just want to thank Every Kindness for allowing me to be here with all of you. And I think the only thing that I would just add on a little bit from what Joshua has said, just very briefly, is just create a safe space for your child. Whether it's offline, whether it's online, whatever they do, whatever they experience, just create a space for them where they can just come and talk to you. And at the end of the day, that is all our child needs from us, a safe space. We can't solve all of their problem. We can't protect them from every single thing that they're going to go through in their life. But the only thing we can do for them is letting them know that we are there for them. And that is all I'll end this with.
Thank you so much, Tolu.
Yeah, I think everything is all connected. I think what I would say is maybe because I'm a commercial person, I think as parents we need to see our children as one of the key stakeholders within the home, you know, and let's us get rid of this mentality of like, yeah, I'm the dad, I'm the mom, of just backing down instructions. We have to see their stakeholders in the home. As much as is your home as parents, it's also their home. You see a situation where a dad is challenging his son something in the house, and the son will say, "Yeah, it's my father's house." Of course, it's his father's house. So we have to see them as stakeholders. And when it comes to making decisions or things, let's try and involve them as much as possible and let them have that sense of having a share in what is happening. And what that does is it also help to improve communication. And communication is key here. And creating that environment for them to be able to talk to us, for us to be able to help in whatever they are going through in any ramifications. We need to consciously make it a routine and not just spot of the moment. Make it a routine to always engage with them, getting them involved, get them talking, and over time, of course, the relationship will keep improving. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tolu. Kalinga.
So much. Again, like everyone else, it's been a brilliant, brilliant session. Still learning because we're still alive and picking up a lot of points here. So for me, I would like to say it's important. It's interesting to hear how we've all almost come to the same place as in vulnerability, as in we're saying as parents, we should be okay to be vulnerable, to say, I've messed up. I am sorry. And to again to be asked to be accountable. I've asked my children, if I do it again, you call me out and say, Mom, you've done that again. Or Mom, it's been 3 months and you keep doing the same thing. I've given them permission, you can do that. So again, yes, to show them that we are not superwoman and superman, we are just human like them, and we also make mistakes, and to correct where we've gone wrong. The other thing I would like to just encourage us parents is that most of us were parented wrong. Well, not wrong. We need to use the right word. Challenging way, the way we were parented, and have passed that on to our children. Again, to say we can go back and do the forgiveness that we need. Some of us, what came out in the parenting session is parents are angry with their parents, so they are doing the same thing. So it's to go into that space where we fear parents are not here anymore, that we ask for forgiveness, that we forgive them. It's difficult to forgive your parents, but to forgive them because they were just human as well. They did what they thought was right. If they're still there, to connect with them and say, this is what happened and it affected me, but I forgive you. So we can be free to parent properly. That's the reparenting you're talking about. We are all in this space together, working together. Nobody's perfect. We're all just encouraging each other. So that vulnerability is a very big thing for me and for our people. Let's work with our children. Let's find out what's going on with them. And again, for us, we have to come down and work with them. And sometimes you're afraid when they start crying, you're like, their personalities who are parents will be like, why are you crying? I can't stand. I don't like crying. But we have to come to learn to be able to listen. Because why are they crying? There's a reason why. There are those children who won't cry. They will just look at you. What's the matter? They just look at you. So finding a way to also be in the same space with them. Don't know how, but God gives the grace. God gives the grace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kalinga. I'll call on Bumi just to see if you've got any final words as we wrap up the session. Over to you,
Yeah,
Bumi.
thank you so much. So first and foremost to our panelists and to every of our participants and audience in here. It's been a very informative session. For me, this last picture speaks a lot, and I know for everyone that has watched the movie, this practically stuck in my own brain because it's a space that I know a lot of parents possibly could be in at the moment. If you are in the situation where you're questioning and asking, where have we got it wrong, which means something is in the works already, please, there are avenues for support in the UK. You can also reach out to Africanness at info@africanness.org. And Petty, could you help just write that in the chat, and we will be able to offer a helping hand whichever way to support you or signpost you to relevant services that can support. And we understand that parenting is a journey in itself. So there would be situations where things go wrong. Please do not try to manage it or handle it by yourself, especially if it's quite very overwhelming. We are there to support. For me, the movie isn't just about the bullying aspect or the online influence. It's all a factor of a whole lot of things. But there is something that I wrote down, and I picked that from a colleague via LinkedIn. And I'll just quickly read that to wrap up my own views about the movie and the learnings and what I picked up from today's conversation. What we don't fix, they inherit. What we avoid, they absorb. What we deny, they carry often quietly. So this film, or this movie as it were, reminds us that parents, we adults in the room, needs to really be very present, because those things that are very missing is what our children pick up on, and at the end of the day could result in something completely different, like in what we've seen in the movie. Connection isn't optional, it is a must. And like we've heard today, that we should try as much as possible to be intentional, connect with our children, get to understand the space where they are in, meet them where they are, at the point where they are. I think I'm also trying to do that as well. And I think that stood out very clearly in every conversation today. And, give them that listening ears, give them that opportunity to express their emotions. And for us, mostly from Africa, probably not just from Africa, from diverse community who have been parented in an authoritative way. I guess most of us come in with that view of parenting. So for some of us, we are on learning. We're learning. Is it whichever way we're learning? It's very important that we continue this kind of conversations so that we keep learning how to best support our children and young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Bumi. I can't but add my thanks to each and every one of you who has made today's session what it has been. And I'm hoping that this is only the start, but we go forward and start to, like Bumi has said, unlearn those aspects which we think we could do differently and better, and then relearn. There are lots of resources out there, some of which we have on our website, and I'll point you to that page. But there are also lots of resources out there, various sites which provide useful information and strategies that parents can practically apply to improve the relationship with children. So we'll encourage you to please take that action and don't let's stop here today. For today's session, we always want to get feedback from you, because your feedback allows us to tailor our programs to meet your needs in the best way possible. So we'll invite you to take the short survey. You can see the QR code on the screen. Just scan it with your camera on your phone. And then at the end of the session as well, you get the link. Just please fill in the links, because that survey is important for us to improve on our services and ensure that we're meeting the needs that you want us to cover. And here is the QR code to the parents resource page. Like I said, we have lots of resources for parents freely available. And we've put this together through our interactions with partners, experts, professional services across the country and beyond. So please feel free to go on there and access the resources available for yourself. And if there's anything you think we could add on as well that will be beneficial for other parents, feel free to reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to explore how to get that on our page. We've got a survey that's going on, and it's a survey on mental health awareness. And this survey was launched as part of the Mental Health Awareness Week in May and is still open and ongoing. What we're trying to do is to understand how mental health services are assessed in Leeds by diverse communities. So we want to hear your voice. Please, it's a very short survey. If you scan the QR code, it takes you to the page. Please let us know what you think and feel free to share across your networks as well. We're working in conjunction with the Leeds Mental Health and Wellbeing Service. And what we're trying to do is to build a strong evidence base for then reviewing how these mental health services are being provided and ensuring that it is tailored to suit the needs of diverse communities. So please do support us by scanning the QR code and also sharing it across your networks as well. We're still running our drop-in sessions weekly for neurodiversity, and these drop-in sessions are open freely to anyone who might be able to benefit from this. And the sessions cover things like understanding what support and help is available for neurodiversity, accessing quality information, support with completing any relevant forms, and it could be forms for funding applications or forms for reaching out to professional services. And we've got trusted advisors who will walk you through that process. It might be for you, it might be for someone else in your networks, so feel free to share with them. We've got advisors who can advise on how to work with schools, correspond with schools, fill in the necessary forms, and prepare the necessary documentation. For instance, review EHCP plans and letters or anything else that's really related to making the neurodiversity process more accessible for parents, because we know that it is in itself a stressful process, especially if parents don't understand what needs or what's required of them. At the best of times, it is a stressful process. So we're here to support parents through that process, and we'll encourage to please share this across your networks, especially within Leeds, so that people can get the support that's needed and freely available for them. And finally, just to say that all of this information is on our website. We're very sociable here at Afrikindness. And so if you're not following us already, please do follow us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We always put out very good content and we always keep you updated on upcoming events as well. So the best way to know is to follow us on social media. And with that, I think we've come to the end of today's session. Thanks for being here until the very end. And can't thank you enough. But more importantly, do remember to keep practicing all the things we've explained today. Thank you so much to our panelists, our guests, and have a lovely rest of your evening.